around and thinks he's Humphrey Bogart. You know, he's a private detective on a case, and he's got his revolver, and you know that's all he wants. He doesn't want any of those automatic weapons, or you know. And but Ghost in the Shell as a story is pretty subversive in many ways. It's really messing with what it means to be human, what it means to exist, where does your soul reside. These are really sort of edgy questions. And so I'm very happy to play the sort of Dean Martin character of the Rat Pack in Ghost in the Shell, where everyone else is sort of crazy and out there. Because I do become the anchor. It's actually why I liked Solid State Society so much, is because at that point, the family of Motoko the mother, Bato the father, Aramaki the grandfather, and Togusa the son has completely discorporated, right? Mom's gone off on a bender. Dad's sulking in the corner. Grandpa's crazy. And here's Togusa the son trying to just hold Section 9 together by strength of will. You know, that stuff's really cool. I think that's interesting. So again, it's rarely about the individual character, but more the story. In Haruhi Suzumiya, yeah, Kyo's the every guy. We don't even really know his true name. He just goes by Kyo. And around him are espers and time travelers and all this sorts of crazy stuff. Sure, why not? You know, that's great. And that's part of why I liked the movie Haruhi Suzumiya so much, is because Kyo has his existential crisis, where he goes, look, Grouch, you've been complaining about this all the time. Do you really want it or not? You've been given the ultimate game reset button. Will you shut it all down, or will you live it out? And to have him fighting with himself about that question, it's sort of his Hamlet moment in the whole show. That's fantastic. But he's totally every man, you know? Young Tom Hanks, I don't know. Yes?
Blood Plus is one of my favorite shows, and I was just wondering what you thought about the storyline and Chachi's
I like Blood Plus. I wish they had compressed the storytelling a little bit. There are times when it felt like there was a little too much air in the plot and we needed to move things forward. I think what I really appreciate most about Blood Plus is the whole notion of the Chevalier. The idea, because this is, and this falls back into that thing I was talking about in terms of female hero journeys. The Americans have not figured out what turns women on. They just can't seem to crack it. And the Japanese figured it out decades ago. And the key is, the advantage of the Chevalier of the Knight is that the girl is the one who's powerful, right? Saya in Blood Plus is the vampire slayer. She is the magical girl. And she even has a sword that she fights with. But just like Sailor Moon, she really would like a nice partner. Tuxedo Mask, Haji, Solomon, you know, that would help her. And so that's really cool. But too often in American storytelling, that guy becomes the main character, and the girl becomes the damsel in distress. And then the girl doesn't have any agency of her own. That's not the case in Sailor Moon. If you watch the show, in the first series, they set it up briefly, but then they have to drop it. Damien can't become Tuxedo Mask unless Usagi becomes Sailor Moon. He literally can't transform into Tuxedo Mask until she first becomes her Sailor Senshi. Now, later in the show they drop that because it's too hard to keep track of, but they set it up very clearly in the first couple episodes. That's awesome. And that's a trope that happens in anime storytelling over and over and over again. I call it the devoted protector, where you have the magical girl who is Sailor Moon, and she has her Tuxedo Mask. Or Kagome in Inuyasha, who is magical, and she has Inuyasha defending her. Or you have Pai in 3x3 Eyes, being protected by Yakumo. Or you have Robin in Witch Hunter Robin, who's protected by Alma. Or you have Integra in Hellsing, who's protected by Alucard. You see this over and over again. And I play these characters over and over and over again. Because I feel like I'm one of the few people who understands the mentality of that Chevalier. Haji is going to put their side. That's just the way it's going to work. It doesn't mean that Haji is more powerful inside. The only Western corollary to this that I can find is Arthurian romance, where there's Guinevere and Lancelot. Guinevere is the queen. She's the one in charge. But Lancelot is her devoted protector. And so that is a storytelling archetype and a female hero journey archetype that I sort of wish would come over here. The closest thing that I can think of is Korra. But what's his name? Mako. It's Mako, right? Which throws me because Mako was the voice of the uncle in Avatar. But yes, Mako in Korra never really steps up to devoted protector status. You know, you just have to do the love triangle with him and the rich girl. And now we have a sort of Betty and Veronica and Archie thing, where is Archie going to go with Betty, Korra, or is he going to go with Veronica, the rich girl? You know, and it's like, okay, but that's a boy's way of thinking about the story. That's not a woman's way of thinking about the story. And so that's, I think, what I appreciate most about Blood Plus, is the culture of the chevaliers and the variation between them. You have Haji, you have Solomon, who is willing to devote himself to a girl who is of a different blood type than him, so who will eventually probably end up in his destruction. And then you've got all those other chevaliers who are working for Diva, who all have their own style and agenda. I mean, it's fantastic. I'd love for that sort of plurality in Western storytelling. But it would require the boys of Hollywood to actually grow up and go through puberty and stop playing with lightsabers. Yes, sir.
What are the challenges in trying to play a character such as Itachi? That kind of, at first he has to be a villain for the storyline. He's portrayed as a villain, but then later on becomes something a lot different.
So, when we started working on Naruto, they said, you know, we've got a cast of thousands, everyone in LA is going to be put to work on this show, right? I got first cast as Ebisu, you know, training, and then he disappeared. And then they didn't call me for months. And I'm going, do I suck? What's wrong here, right? Episode 80-something comes along, and Itachi is showing back up in the storyline. And I get a call from Mary Elizabeth to call me to come in and play Itachi. I don't really know anything about Itachi at this point. I hadn't been following Naruto. I come in, and Mary Elizabeth had gone to Japan, and she had gotten enameled pins of all the main characters. And she had handed out the Narutos and the Sasuke's and the Sakura to all the voice actors as they had come in. But she had left over Itachi. That was her last pin. And so I came into the studio and she goes, Pikachu, I choose you! You know, and I kind of go, thanks. I was totally confused because it's episode 80. I'm thinking any character that's being introduced in episode 80 can't possibly matter that much. Oh my God! Right? As soon as they started playing the video, and I figured out that he was Sasuke's brother, and that he was coming back as this villainous character, and I go, oh no, and Mary Elizabeth's like looking at me, she's like, you get it now? I get it now, I get it, I get it. And I also understand why you cast me as this character. I get it, okay. And so we're in this, and the first scene with Sasuke is going down, and I'm all up in his business, and it's getting all vicious. And in my mind, literally the only thing I can think is, he obviously loves his brother. That's all I could think, because I go, for what other reason would this character be so obsessed with Sasuke? Why else would you can't hate someone you don't care about. If you don't care about them, you can't hate them, they're just annoying. Who are you? Stop it, you know? It's only if you care about something, oh, I hate it when you do that, you know? Like, you can only hate someone you care about. And so he is all up in his business, doing the whole, you know, boy named Sue thing, where I'm going to torture him to make him stronger, you know? And I'm going, clearly he loves his brother. And I got that from like the first episode. And this was very early in the show, and people are like, what do you think about Itachi? I think he loves his brother. No! He's a villain! He's nasty! He's awful! He's terrible! 3 years later, oh my God, he totally did it for his brother! Called it! Right? And this goes back to that whole thing about understanding storytelling and mileage. I can see the Matrix, damn it. I can see these characters because I've been through these storytelling tropes so many times that if the story doesn't totally suck, it's probably going to go this way. If the story just totally sucks and makes no sense, it could go anyway and I have no way to predict it. But if the story has any cohesion whatsoever and has any craft behind it whatsoever, it's probably going to go this way, right? And I looked at it and I go, because I had to figure out why is Itachi doing what he's doing? He must be doing it because he loves his brother. Otherwise, why would he obsess over him? Otherwise, he would kill him. You know? Otherwise, he wouldn't say, you don't have enough hate, and you know what? You never will. That is a dojo master thrashing his student to make him better. What else could it be? If it's going to make any sense whatsoever in the larger storytelling. And because I knew Naruto was this huge franchise that everybody loved, I thought, okay, the storytelling can't completely suck. It's got to have some redeeming qualities. That's probably what's going on. And then later on, yeah, that's what's going on. Now, I can do that with many characters. There are characters I have not been able to do that with. I was able to do it on Last Exile. I watched the first 6 episodes of Last Exile, and I was playing Alex Rowe, the captain of the Sylvana. He's like a modern-day Captain Carlock. And I was looking at him, and after about 6 episodes, I went, yeah, it's about a girl. Right? He's upset about a girl. Okay, got it. And I could play him. When I watched Witch Hunter Robin, I sat down the night before I had to record and started watching the first 4 or 6 episodes. And Amon is absolutely upset about something, but it's not a girl. If he was upset about a girl, he'd act differently towards Robin. But he's completely dismissive towards Robin, and he chastises her a lot. And I'm like, this is not... Okay, so I'm watching up to episode 10, still can't figure it out. 12, 13, 14, still can't figure it out. 20, 22, still can't figure it out. It's a 26-episode series. I have to get to episode 24. It's like 4 in the morning before I finally figure out what the hell is Amon's damage. Like, why does he act the way he does? And when I finally figure it out, I go, oh, it's about his mom! I had no idea. That totally didn't compute. But when I figured out it was about his mom, then I'm like, now I know how to play it. And I come to the studio the next day, and I'm like bleary-eyed because I've got no sleep. And I'm like, Crispin, are you okay? Yeah, I know what Amon's upset about. Let's do it. Let's record it. Okay, we're good. and I know it had an effect because when we recorded the very first scene, Amon is chasing one of these witches, and he backs the witch into a corner. And the witch goes, are you what they call a hunter? And Amon has this great Clint Eastwood moment where he takes his gun and goes, probably, and blows him away. Now, the only way I could deliver that probably right is if I knew what he was upset about. If he was upset about a girl, it would have been very different. You know, it would have been, probably, right? It's a revenge, but it's not. It's disgust, probably, you cockroach. And that's what Cartoon Network used for the promo. They played that over and over on the promo. They love that probably line.
That's why I watched it.
That's why you, exactly. See, there you go. Unless I had stayed up until 4 in the morning to figure out why Amon did what he did, you would not have identified with the character, you would not have watched the show, and it would have sucked, and I would have hated myself. I would have hated it because this stuff lives on DVD forever. I have one chance to make this piece of artwork live forever. I can't mess it up. I've got to know what the hell is going on if I'm going to play this character properly. Because the story matters that much to me. Because someone is going to go home with that story, and it's going to mean something to them. And I want to make sure I didn't screw it up. I don't want to be the part that they go, oh, it's really good, except for that Crispin guy. You know? Like, that would make me cry in my pillow. And I couldn't live with myself if that were the case. So, yes, that's why I have to know what's going on. Yes, ma'am.
I actually have a big favor to ask of you. My friend, her birthday was a couple days ago, and she's like, I don't remember if you remember us, she's a really big fan of yours.
Okay.
And because it was her birthday, I was wondering if you could do an Alucard for us, if it's like the right thing.
Sure. Do you have a favorite Alucard line?
Actually, I have a personal one that would kind of fit her just right. Could you say happy birthday, my dark beauty, Darcy?
Sure.
Yeah.
It's true. When I'm playing Alucard, the microphone's usually not that far away. So.
Her birthday's on Halloween, so what?
Yeah.
Oh, your birthday's Halloween? You rock.
She held on 14 more days to make it that way.
Wow.
Held over my head, by the way.
Halloween is my
It's
favorite
just that
holiday,
she
by
likes
the way. So, happy birthday, my dark angels.
Beauty.
My Duke. Okay. We ready?
Happy birthday, my dark beauty, Darcy.
I was going to add on there, you undead maggot. It didn't seem quite appropriate. Yes, ma'am.
Like, I know Alucard has like a deep, dark voice, and Shizuo has like a dark voice, but it's not as dark as Alucard's. How do you judge how deep and dark you want this character?
It's usually a matter of their psychology, honestly, and deciding what's going to sound appropriate for the character. Alucard is at the absolute bottom of my range, and I want him to be there because I want him to sound sort of otherworldly. If he is in this range, even if I try to be vicious in this range, that's a different character. That's not the right quality. I've got to put him in an area of my voice that doesn't sound natural, that sounds off, in order to give him that edge. With Shizuo, I can't make him that otherworldly because he lives in Tokyo. Right? He lives in Kyoto, in modern day Tokyo. And so he's got to sound believable in modern day Tokyo. So if he sounded like Alucard, people would be like, what's wrong with you, dude? Like, what? It would break the reality, the verisimilitude of the world. Okay? So that's the challenge. Ian McKellen can't play Gandalf the way he plays Magneto. Right? Because Gandalf lives in Middle-earth and Magneto lives in current day. It's a completely different sensibility. So usually that's what determines is the sort of style of the show, what's going to make the character believable, and their psychology. If you really want to hear the difference in that psychology with the same voice, watch that scene in the Haruhi Suzumiya movie where I talk to myself as Kyun. There's one Kyun at the school desk, and there's another Kyun behind him sort of yelling at him. I was very careful in that section, not only in my acting, but I rewrote the lines. Because I wanted the Kyun behind him, who is sort of the more honest Kyun, his internal Kyun, to have a different way of speaking than the Kyun that is the public Kyun. The Kyun at the table is his public persona. And so I wanted that Kyun to talk like he always does in the show. But the Kyun behind him talks very differently. It's subtle, but I had to make sure that was clear so that it has a feeling to it. You probably can't point at exactly what I'm doing differently, but it feels different, you know? Time to answer the question. You know, he's sort of in his face. And then it's that kind of thing that I'm looking for to make sure that the psychology is coming across properly to the audience. And again, it could be something as subtle as that, where there's nothing overt you can point to. I'm not putting on a crazy accent, you know? But if it's not there, there's a taste missing. Like there's something not satisfying about it, because it doesn't have the spin on the ball to make it really work. That makes sense?
Yeah.
I had the same thing when I was doing Haji at the end of Blood Plus, where he finally lets it all out. The writers in that show were awful. And I rewrote every single line of Haji and of Don Argento throughout the entire show. I rewrote every character I played, I rewrote my character. But especially that last scene. I was just like, guys, go take a coffee break, because I'm going to record this, because you cannot fuck. Sorry, excuse my language, but that's like you cannot. That is the linchpin of the entire relationship between Haji and Saya. And if I don't get that right, I will get hate mail. Like it's not, you know. They talk funny, but they're really nice. No. Oh, you mean Yuri Gisa?
Yeah.
What would you like to know about Holland? I tried to put everything I could into my performance of Holland. So is there something in my performance you found lacking? Or is there some aspect of your character?
He's like one of my favorite characters
Oh, good.
ever.
I like him too. Are you hoping that I will give you an insight into Holland that you didn't have before?
Basically, yeah.
Okay. What is it you want to know about him? I mean, if I'm going to channel Holland right now, which, you know, I guess I can, although I didn't write him, right? I just played him.
Yeah.
But what is it about Holland you want to know?
I don't know, I just wanted to hear you talk about him.
Well, he's got this really cool ship called the Gecko State. I guess the thing, Holland is the classic older brother character that I play a lot, right? Whether it's Itachi or Karasu and Noin or whoever else. I play the older brother character a lot. So I thought what was interesting about Holland was that he's not the older brother. Even though the show is set up that he's the mentor or the older father figure to Renton, it turns out Holland is actually the younger brother of that man. Dewey, yes. He's the younger brother of Dewey. And that was a revelation to me when we were doing the show, because I didn't know that was the case. So when we hit the Dewey scenes, and it turns out that I'm Dewey's younger brother, I go, oh, wow, huh, that, I never play the younger brother. That's interesting. So that was sort of a character revelation for me. Also, I really liked Holland. Even though the movie has some story issues, Holland in the movie is in a way closer to Optimus Prime. He has to take care of his family because the movie has a completely different premise from the TV series, and that he's trying to keep his family alive, and they could all die at some point. And so there's an aggressiveness to Holland in the movie that you don't see as much in the TV series because the plot is different. But his stuff with Talho is pretty heartbreaking. And I was glad that we got to do that side of Holland, that it wasn't just Holland beating up Renton, because Renton is the chosen one to pilot the Nervosh or whatever. You know, like it's nice to see that aspect of it. So, does that satisfy you?
Yeah.
Okay. Pika pika.
While you're channeling your inner Holland, do you have any favorite moments behind the scenes when you were recording?
Well, I really liked that last. I really liked that last scene with Holland when he's fighting in his mech and he reaches out and he can feel everyone's souls and he sees the one soul he hasn't seen before and he can't fire. And then there's an explosion and all you see is his mech and it's like missing a leg and it's on, like it's just been completely, but he's still okay, he's still in there. And it's him and Talho talking back and forth. And he's finally sort of come to a level of peace where he doesn't have to fight so much anymore. And he's resolved his differences with Talho, and they can be a couple now. And not just, you know, Snow White and the Prince going off to the castle, but they can actually be a functional couple together.
I still find it amusing that Talho is Dewey's ex who he like abandoned.
Yeah, right? I mean,
Yeah,
that's the thing that I wish we did in American storytelling. American storytelling, both in animation and in films, somehow won't let people stay married.
I know the divorce rate in America is high, but it's serious.
But like, as if, and I don't mean that you have to be married, but be a couple, right? I mean, I don't think Holland and Talho are technically married, but they're a couple, and everyone knows them as a couple. And they're a romantic couple. They actually do love each other. And they're going to fight on the same ship with each other. God help you in Star Trek accomplish that. Anyone gets married in Star Trek, one of them's going to die. They somehow cannot deal with the idea that you have two characters together who are in a relationship and that they maybe want to explore what that relationship means while still trying to accomplish a goal. So like, I'm fond of Star Trek Voyager, and eventually Tom and B'Elanna get together. And as soon as they get together, it's like they disappear from the show. There's never any affection between them. There's never any jealousy. Well, no, they do that. So they'll do the jealousy, but they won't do the affection. They won't show them loving each other and caring for each other. They did it in Next Gen. With every time they gave Patrick Stewart a partner, they had to kill her or get rid of her.
Yeah, Vash who went off on the time spurt with
Right.
you.
She has to be completely unavailable. Or the one time.
Or you go into like the comics universe where DC has said that they won't marry any of their seasons or any of their comic book heroes because that would make them happy. And they can't be happy.
Right, because somehow once you put a ring on your finger, all problems are solved. Right? This is the writing of an adolescent teenage boy. You know, it does, and specifically boy. This is not the writing of someone who says, so I'm in love with this person, how do I relate to them? How do we explore our love together and conquer the universe? Right? How does that work exactly? There's all sorts of brilliant stuff to mine there, but people don't seem to, American writers don't seem to want to explore it. American male writers, let me preface that. American male writers don't seem to want to explore that. But the Japanese will do it over and over again. So that's one of the...
Because it's so interesting.
Because they're not children about it. And this is the thing that I don't understand. I don't know if it's because there are more women in manga in Japan. I don't know why. It's weird. Miyazaki loves, the majority of Miyazaki's films have female main characters. Even Disney, crazy as he was, the first animated film he made was Snow White. He did like making princess films. As much as we might judge them now as being far too,
Get back in the kitchen.
get back in the kitchen. They're far too domestic is the word I was looking for. As much as we might criticize and find that princess archetype not applicable now, back then it was more applicable and Disney liked it. His pinnacle film, as far as I'm concerned, in terms of artistic achievement, is Sleeping Beauty. Right? Both technically and artistically, Sleeping Beauty is the tops in terms of 2D animation as far as I'm concerned. Sleeping Beauty, right? Not some guy's story. And the logo for Disney is the castle, the magical castle. John Lasseter at Pixar hates magic. He hates magic. He doesn't understand it. He doesn't understand girl storytelling, that's why he won't do it. And when he finally does do a film, Brave, the character doesn't do anything brave. In order to be brave, there must be fear. Either she needs to be afraid of something personally and overcome her fear, or everyone around her is afraid of something, and she's the only one brave enough to step forward and fight. She does neither in the film. She sews. It's ridiculous. Right? So, and cries. So she's angry, she's petulant, she's forceful, but she's never brave. Who is oppressing her? Who is trying to put her in a sexually oppressive position? A woman. Really? Honestly? Her mother. Not the guys who in Scotland are probably, at this time period, incredibly sexist. Like, what are you talking about? This doesn't make any sense. No, the father is going to be friendly and have no problem with it. Because the Pixar guys don't want to admit they're men, they're part of male chauvinism. We're not male chauvinists. They had to bring in a woman to write Jessie in Toy Story because they didn't know how to write a girl.
I guess I have more respect for Pixar.
It's ridiculous. No, let me get this straight. I am criticizing them on one point. They don't know how to write women. They know how to write buddy films. Right? Toy Story, Finding Nemo. And even though Dory is female, it doesn't really matter.
She's a fish.
Because she could be male. She has no romance. There is no, her gender is never really addressed in it. She's a fish. So they're really good at buddy films. Monsters Inc., you know? So on that, they're unstoppable. But women, they can't do it. They can't even do it as good as Walt did. That's saying something. When you can't do a girl's story as well as Snow White, Cinderella, or Sleeping Beauty, and it's 2013, we got issues, right? We got problems here. Especially when the Japanese are kicking their butt. Like, the Japanese can do it over and over again. And men in Japan can do it over and over again. Ikuhara, this guy, can come in, take over the second season of Sailor Moon, get frustrated because it's not really the way he wants it, and goes off and makes Revolutionary Girl Utena. Blow my mind. I don't know what it is about the Japanese culture that allows men to do it over there, and men over here can't do it. I don't know if it's just the chauvinism over here or what.
Probably men are more sympathetic over there.
It may be the homophobia,
Yeah, but I wouldn't.
right? I mean, homophobia hurts not only people of homosexual persuasion, but it hurts heterosexual males too, because it means that they can't explore a part of their psyche that has now been deemed socially unacceptable, right? You can't be sensitive. You can't dress well and put product in your hair or you're gay, because gay is so bad. So I don't know. Again, I need a sociologist to help me with this one. But Miyazaki has said that he likes, many times he likes women as his main characters, because if you have a guy with a gun fighting for his country, we expect that. But when a girl does it, it's Nausicaa of the Valley of the Wind, and it has a different resonance. But it's not just that, because Kiki doesn't have to pick up a gun in Kiki's Delivery Service. Kiki has to self-actualize. That scene, when I was first watching Kiki's Delivery Service, I had the same feeling I had when watching Totoro. Nothing's happening, right? I had this feeling of like, there's not a lot happening here. She's sort of delivering cookies. And I was like, what's going on? And then by the end of the film, I'm weeping. I'm done. And because he has to lay the groundwork for the self-actualization. Not a lot happens in the beginning of the Karate Kid either. He's got to learn to paint the fence and wax on, wax off. But when the world goes quiet and Kiki is on that broom and the bristles on the broom start going crazy and she's trying to sort of find her center again to take off and save tempo, and chills.
Every time I watch it.
Cry, chills when I see that. You know? Yeah.
Live action?
Yeah, I'm trying to know on that.
Yeah, they're.
So, long-winded answer.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. As you can tell, I was starting me up.
Do you reference the original
Do I reference the original Japanese voice actors before I prepare? Well, when we're recording, we hear them in the previews. And certainly when I go to audition, I always try to get at least a clip of the show so I can hear the quality of their voices before we go in. That helps me understand what kind of archetypes we're dealing with. So I don't even really care who the Japanese voice actor is. Do they sound like Luke Skywalker? Do they sound like Han Solo? Do they sound like Darth Vader? Right? That helps me understand where things are sitting in terms of casting, so that I know, it's almost like opera, like who's the tenor, who's the baritone, who's the bass, so that I can figure out where I'm going to fit in. That guy, way too tenor, not heavy. Those two guys, yeah, that's my range. Okay, I can do those. And so then it's a matter of figuring it out. That's for casting. When it comes to actually performing the show, when we're listening to the Japanese performance, first of all, I watch the show not to memorize the performance, but to understand the plot. I'm trying to keep track of all the events that are happening in the show, because my part is probably not the whole show. And so I need to remember what's happening before me and what's going to happen after me, so that my part of the symphony plays right. So when I watch a show, I watch totally for plot, and also to understand the psychology of the character. I'm not trying to memorize a performance. When I'm in the booth and I hear the performance, what I'm trying to do is figure out the acting choice of the actor. I'm listening to his performance and going, what does he want from his scene partner? Right? What is he going for in this scene? Do I agree with his choice? Most of the time I do. If I don't, I'll switch it up to make it work for an American audience, or to make it work better in what we're doing. Or maybe he wasn't that good of an actor, and I can do better than that. Or I need to change it because he's doing something that's not going to translate to an American audience as well, and I want to keep the flavor, so I've got to tailor it just a bit. And now you'll get the Japanese flavor, but you'll understand it in English. But I'm never looking to imitate his performance, because it's a different language, verbs at the end of the sentence, grammatical structure is completely different, melodies are completely different. We can't go, eh? In English, because we don't do that when we're surprised. We go, huh? Or, We don't go, eh? But the Japanese do that all the time. So there's things like, those are but it's that kind of subtle adjustments that we're making to make sure that the English audience is having the same emotional experience as the Japanese audience did, watching the Japanese. Obviously that's impossible, but that's the ideal that we're going for. And then my personal thing is, I also want to keep the Japanese flavor. With something like Digimon, they don't care about keeping the Japanese flavor, they just Americanize it. Pokemon, they just Americanize it.
Thank you.
Yeah. I wrote the scripts for the original Pokemon, it drove me nuts. Because they kept Americanizing everything, and I was like, but the original, no, okay. And eventually, I got fired, because we didn't get along. But, so if I go to see a Chekhov play, I want it to feel Russian. I don't want it to feel like Friends. Or Seinfeld, you know, I want it to feel Russian. And when I watch my Japanese animation, I want it to feel Japanese. There are some shows that are more Japanese than others. If I'm watching Rurouni Kenshin, it better feel Japanese. Cowboy Bebop? Cowboy Bebop's already pretty Western. You know, there's not a whole lot of specific Japanese culture to Cowboy Bebop, except maybe Vicious and the fact that he fights with katana, you know. But it's almost like Chinese mafia, it's more than Yakuza. You know, so but that's my agenda. Yes, sir.
Okay.
You got Gundam Pikachu sitting on
Well, I'm
Haru.
actually cosplaying Digimon Season 5, Marcus Matsuda.
When Gundam showed up?
Well, no, I carried around with candy in it. And I have her Pikachu.
Okay.
Yes, but one quick question. Okay, so you said you tried getting the role of Koji from Season 4.
I didn't try getting the role. I auditioned.
Oh, you auditioned for it?
I auditioned for the role. It's up for the producer to
Now,
decide whether to hire me.
When you were doing the research and when you were doing the lines, did you notice that his human spirit form, all of the moves in Japanese were all German?
Which would make sense since his name is Loemon.
Well, actually, the original was Wolfmon, but yes.
Right. Which they probably couldn't use for trademarking purposes.
Yeah.
I did not get to see Digimon before I worked on it.
What about whatever you did, Thomas Toma from Season 5?
When I did Thomas in Digimon, that was Frontiers, wasn't it?
No, it was Dash Squad Saber.
Oh, Data Squad, right. Yeah, Thomas Norstein. When I did that one, I also did not get to see the show ahead of time. Actually, on that one, we didn't even hear the previews. In that one, we wouldn't even, because usually they preview the animation in with the Japanese, and then we go back and put ours in. On that one, we were on such a tight deadline that they would just, we didn't even see the animation. We would go beep, 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 and we just have to start talking, and it had to match the lip flap of the characters. Now the script was written really well, so most of the time it did, but we didn't get any previews in Japanese. So we were totally just going on our own recognizance. So, go ahead.
Well, I was basically going to ask you what your opinion was of how they basically take a normal, like all ages oriented show in Japan and change it to something completely child oriented, basically, as far as like dialogue and type concerned. And like even in Season 4, there was just one scene where they were in this village looking for a fortune teller, and it was full of fortune tellers, and this one goes up to them saying that he has drinking fortune telling. Basically, the way it works is, you give him a swig, they'll tell you his fortune.
And they had to cut
And he was intoxicated, stumbling around.
Yeah, and they had to cut that, I imagine.
I completely forget personally, because I watched the English version, but
It happens all the time. When we did Digimon Frontiers, the 4th season, the girl is always in this skimpy bikini. Drove Disney nuts. They hated it. There was a creature called Sephirothimon. For those of you who know the Kabbalah, the Sephiroth, the Tree of Life, all the different Sephirot.
oh yes, the sphere, the big
the
form
Digimon,
of
all the spheres
Mercury
would go
Mon.
around, and it was a villain. Sephirothimon was a villain
Yeah, they call it
in Digimon Frontiers.
not Starmon.
Thank you. And the producer was Jewish and thought it was insulting for Sephirothimon to be the evil one. Even though Sephirothimon is being controlled, it's not Sephirothemon's true nature. And we've also got a Cherubimon who's being evil, so I guess Christianity we can call as evil, but Judaism we can't. What? They're both being controlled by something else, it's not their true nature, whatever. So she decided to change the name of Sephirothimon to Sakakumon. Really? That's better? Sakakumon?
Or how the main antagonist was Lucemon, which is based off of Lucifer. He goes from the different forms of being this little angel to the fallen angel to the monster.
I trust that you are an expert on Digimon.
I love that.
That is obvious. They change it because...
Hell yeah.
Is the question
yours better?
What is the question you are asking? Is the question you're asking why did they change it?
Well, what your opinion was, since you said you go and do research on them, but I know you didn't do research on those roles.
My opinion is I wish we didn't have to change it. My opinion is I wish that America would allow animation to be something other than kiddie fare or adult satire like The Simpsons and South Park and Family Guy. I wish there was some space in between.
I appreciate that from you so much.
No problem. Hence the nature of my career, which tends to be mostly Japanese animation and video games, where it is possible to tell mature adult storytelling with animated characters. Usually when American companies try to do that in this culture, they really struggle. Even when they want to. Even when they want Young Justice to be a little edgier and more adult, we have to keep dumbing it down. My character, Red Arrow, is a heroin addict. And he should have track marks. And he has an illegitimate child. But we had to cut all of that from the animated version because broadcast standards and practices won't accept it because it won't help them sell toys. They've got to sell toys. If the toys don't sell, the show is canceled. Boom. So that's the problems with the economic system here, but it's a larger cultural problem. Americans in general think that cartoons are only for kids. Until that culture changes, you are not going to see any sort of titanic shift in the content coming out. Korra is still going to fight for audience. It's going to struggle to try to find, it keeps losing viewers all the time. And it's tough. I don't know, but the culture's got to change. I'm hoping as each generation moves up, it changes and gets better and better. Technically, we only have 5 minutes left.
No, 5 more minutes.
5 more minutes, and then to the okay, 5 minutes and autograph. Okay, so 5.
One more question.
Okay, you, Matt.
Okay, I'm an opera fan.
Opera fan, fantastic.
Opera fan has been many, many years.
Okay.
20 years since I missed a game a lot.
All right.
So, my question is, if you had been able to pursue a career in opera, the characters that you would have wanted to portray, and talk a little bit about them, and I have an idea about that.
Well, it's funny. As much as I love opera, and I was raised on opera, and yeah, not bad. No? I never really thought of myself as being an opera singer. My opera training came much later in my acting career. I always thought of myself as a singer. I sang in an a cappella group all through college. I was one of those actors who was always willing to sing. Usually actors are like, I don't want to sing. I'd be like, no, I'll sing. Let's sing. Let's sing. And then I was at a summer theater festival, the same summer theater festival where my friend hooked me up with the anime students, and they wanted people to sing in the cabaret. And so I said, sure, I'll audition, and I auditioned, and I thought I did pretty well, until the Broadway singers came in and blew me out of the water. And I thought, oh, I can't sing like that. And that's when I called up my friend who was in the touring company of Les Mis, and said, Adam, who do I study with? And he goes, you study with Judith. Great. Called her up and started taking classical opera training. But she was quite happy, because usually all her students want to sing Broadway. And I was like, well, I'll sing Broadway, but I really like opera. She's like, thank God. Here's Kalina's aria from La Boheme. Sing that. Sing to your coat. Sing to your winter coat. Great. So I like that. But as much as I admire opera, for some reason I never thought of myself actually as an opera singer, as a career. I'm a Mozart lyric baritone. So I have Don Giovanni, right? Sure, I'd love to play Don Giovanni, absolutely. I'd love to play Iago, although I'm probably not quite heavy enough to play Iago. Yeah, I mean those are great things. But if for some reason, I don't know. I just thought of myself. I was too much of an elf to sort of think of myself in the opera. So yes, but that's, I'm sort of a lyric baritone. I happen to have a very low extension. I can go down to a low E, which is like ridiculous for a baritone. But I can't project it. Sure, sure. But that low extension works really well on the microphone. I can't fill an opera house with it. So that's why. Yeah, the tessitura of my voice tends to sit perfect Mozart lyric baritone. So Don Giovanni, sure, no problem. But you know, Rigoletto, not so much. I don't have that heavy spin toe sort of sound yet. Maybe I will when I grow older. Sure.
Yeah, that's Alucard.
Sure. Throw people off that. That's fine. All right. So we're done now? All right. Is there anyone who wants an autograph who can't make it to the next panel? If so, walk slowly over.